The film begins and we see a group of 5 young criminal offenders named Marty, Trish, Zach, Rosa, and CB. They are heading out for a rehabilitation camping trip and are led by Sergeant Hoke and Miss K. After arriving, the sergeant tells them they will all be sleeping outside in tents while he enjoys the cabin. While they settle in, we see a bear in the woods and suddenly a giant appears behind it and picks it up, snapping his neck. That night they sit around a fire when a local man named Meeks jumps out of the woods and startles them. The sergeant knows him though and sends him off, and the campers go to bed. The next morning Hope takes them on a grueling hike through the woods. They stop for lunch halfway through and Zach is exhausted and says he's leaving. Marty follows after him and the two stumble across some old-looking bones. Zach rips off a large horn from the skull and decides he'll take it as a souvenir. The other campers want him to leave it, but Zach doesn't listen. The group moves out and continues their hike. Meanwhile, we hear loud footsteps and something returns to the site of the bones. It is a giant and it discovers the missing horn and picks up the skull. As he holds it, he screams loudly in rage and it echoes through the woods. The campers hear it but assume it must be a mountain lion. As they hike, Marty grabs the horn from Zach and teases him by holding it in the air. However, wind blows through it and it makes a noise. This notifies the giant of its location and we see him begin to walk in that direction. A few minutes later, the campers stop to rehydrate. Suddenly, Sergeant Hoax turns around and the group hears loud thuds marching through the woods. The giant then emerges from the trees and stands directly behind Trish, who is oblivious and on her phone. They stare in complete shock and the giant lifts up a large axe. He then violently swings it down and it slices Trish completely in half. Hoax screams to run and the group goes sprinting through the woods. The lumberjack giant chases them with his bloodied axe and the whole ground shakes. He swings it violently and barely misses Rosa. However, the giant hits a tree which slices off and falls on her. It then continues chasing the other campers and catches up to them. The giant winds up his axe and Hoax jumps in to push the girls away. However, he is then hit and dies from the brutal swing. Meanwhile, Zach and Marty were hiding from the giant and managed to free Rosa, who is now injured. Everyone runs and they reconvene at the campsite. They rush inside the cabin and lock the door behind them. Inside, everyone panics and wonders what that thing was. Miss K calms them down and they decide to make a break for the van because Marty can hotwire it. Before they go, they gather some weapons including a gun and a pitchfork. Marty reaches the car and begins to hotwire it when suddenly some twigs snap in the woods. Miss K draws the gun and scans the area. She tells Marty to hurry because she can't see anything through the tall trees. But Marty is unable to start it, so they race back inside the cabin. Zach then looks out the window and curses when he sees the giant dragging the van away. That was their only escape and now they have no way out. The giant is then seen returning to his cave and cleaning the blood off of his deadly axe. Back at the cabin, the group bandages their wounds and hear a knock on the door. They open it and find the local man Meeks, and he asks them what they did. He screams and says this is the first time he has seen the giant so angry. Zach eventually reveals the horn they found and Meeks tells them this is very bad. He states the giant is actually Paul Bunyan, the legendary folk hero lumberjack. Meeks says the stories are real and Paul Bunyan lived in the 1800s. He was born with a disease which made him super large and allowed him to live longer than other humans. However, the disease also causes him to always have the mind of a child. We then see a flashback and see a group of hunters walking through the snowy woods. They came across an injured blue ox which was Paul's Bunyan's beloved friend. They shot and killed the ox and Bunyan found them as they feasted on it. Meeks then states that Bunyan massacred them all and placed the sacred remains of the ox outside his cave. For years he has been growing bigger and living peacefully in the mountains until Zach stole the horn from the ox's remains. Meeks then tells them the only way they will survive is if they return the horn back to its resting place. Zach then grabs the horn and chucks it into the woods in hopes the giant will leave them alone. But as he walks back to the cabin, the horn is thrown and impales him in the chest. He is then dragged into the dark woods by Paul and screams echo through the air. Inside, everyone cries, but Meeks says they might be safe now and could leave in the morning. The next day, Meeks tells CB that she looks exactly like the woman who broke Paul's heart hundreds of years ago. He shows her a picture and the two share a close resemblance. Meeks then leaves to retrieve his truck and come back for them. Meanwhile, we see another sheriff named Tanner walking through the woods. He is actually CB's father and wanted to check up on the camping site. He discovers Hoke's body and the giant's footsteps and becomes worried. He runs up a watchtower and radios for backup, but no one replies. Back at the cabin, the remaining campers wait anxiously for Meeks to return. As they look out the window, they hear footsteps again. Suddenly, the giant appears and slams his giant axe through the roof of the house. He continues his violent assault and swings his axe non-stop while also kicking rocks at the cabin. The group cowers inside and Paul reaches over and stares at them all. It reaches inside, but Marty stabs it with a pitchfork. It is no use though, and Rosa is picked up and lifted in the air by her legs. She screams in fear and then is tossed away and slammed into a tree. Miss K then fires her gun at the giant and hits him in the forehead. Marty races to Rosa's side, but she is dead, and he stares angrily at the stumbling giant. The three campers try to run away, but it menacingly stomps towards them. They are completely cornered, but Sheriff Tanner arrives just in time. He takes aim and shoots 3 times at the giant's head. It stumbles backwards and goes crashing into the cabin, and he embraces his daughter. Martin thinks the giant is dead, but Tanner explains he only tranquilized it and they need to move before it wakes up again. As they enter the woods, they are confronted by Meeks, who holds out a shotgun. He tells them Paul is important to him and he doesn't want him reported and killed. Marty tries to take the gun from Meeks, but it goes off during a struggle and he is killed. As Tanner faces Meeks, the giant begins to stand up in the background. Meeks thinks it will protect him, but it throws his axe and he is instantly killed. The trio then races back to Tanner's police truck and get inside. Tanner stands in the back and watches the distance with his gun. It's all quiet. Then he turns and sees the giant charging towards them at a rapid speed. He shoots at it and the beast swings his axe back and forth. The giant gets close and just misses Tanner but hits the side of the truck. It disappears and is suddenly in front of the vehicle a few seconds later. It swings its axe but Tanner ducks and only the top police lights are broken off. However, the truck spins out of control and hits a tree. Tanner is thrown off and dazed, but they get him up and run away. They reach a small lake and look up to find the giant roaring on a hill. It then takes a massive leap and lands right in front of them. The group runs to a nearby dam and are chased the entire way. They reach a door and Tanner shoots the lock, but it doesn't budge. They seem cornered, but suddenly multiple trucks arrive and armed hunters jump out. The giant turns and growls at them as they raise their weapons. It charges and they open fire with all sorts of different guns. The giant is repeatedly struck and eventually falls over the edge of the bridge. He sinks into the water below and the hunters cheer in unison. Tanner then thanks the men and everyone is left staring into the water as the film comes to an end.